Hello, everyone, and welcome to pretty much the last talk at this amazing International Women's Day event at GDG San Jose. When Deepa reached out to me about my journey, I was very humbled and wasn't really sure that how much it is there for me to share. But I know that along my path, many women has inspired me and helped me get where I am as a developer. It's pretty much like success of every woman should be the inspiration to another. We should raise each other up. And especially with those ideas in mind and people who are really starting or at the beginning of their career, maybe, like I can provide some insights. This is the photo from our 2019 Women's Day celebration at work. Um, I have amazing team where we have, like many women in my team. So I'm very proud to be working with them every single day. Um, Let me also introduce myself. I am a software developer at Tinder with almost 7 years of Android development experience. I have been a member of Women Tech Makers and Women Who Codes. I'm also actively participating at conferences, either speaking at them or just as an attendee. I previously worked at Cloudon that was acquired by Dropbox. You can reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn. These are my Twitter handle and the LinkedIn profile. And a little bit about myself. I love to bike, play tennis, hike, stay updated in the Android stuff. So whenever I have extra time, I just spend time to like browse through YouTube videos and learn. Recently, I also learned surfing, and I am also a wife and a mom for 7-year-old daughter. Let me share some of the pictures from my work. This is the picture of women at Tinder headquarters in LA. And this is the picture when in-person events at Google I/O with my Android team and some other fun picture from Palo Alto office on Employee Day. And if I have to summarize my work life, I would just say this is what I have landed in. I'm totally embracing it. And let me know if you have felt the same. So let me also like share a little bit of an agenda or an outline on what I think I want to like um, um, you know shape my presentation talk on. We can like quickly rewind into some of the highlights of my previous career, and then the roadmap I took to achieve the transition and some of the reasoning why I wanted to make that transition, some of the challenges and fears I faced along, and finally leaning in and taking the leap. Um, so let me start with a quick poll. How many of you have a degree in CS? How many of you have a degree in engineering role, but not from computer science directly? And how many of you have a non-engineering background? Um, the reason is Stack Overflow does this survey every year where over 80,000 developers participate. And they have this bunch of these questions around what technology stack they use, what is the language they prefer, what study material they get it from, the gender, ethnicity, and many more. One such survey is the stats around the number two. And there is a quick snapshot here where you will see that 60%, almost 54, 55% does come from the engineering background, but the remaining 40%, 45% are totally non-engineering background plus, engineering but not computer science degree. And if you look at the ratio, it's kind of equal split between coming from different discipline and from, non-CS engineering degree. And I think that this computer science degree would always squeeze further because now programming as a language has been introduced from early get-go in the school. The kids, they can choose any discipline they want, but they can still, know how to code and be a developer, born developers. And with that, let me segue into what I was doing previously. I was an electrical engineer and I worked in this industry for almost 10 years. This is a picture of a substation where after the electricity is generated, it gets transmitted. And after transmitted, that's where you have small distributing centers where it gets distributed and finally reach the home. Um, this is like what I had been doing in nutshell. This is the hardware side of system, but then you need to isolate the fault. Otherwise, it is easier that any, it can burn, it is important to isolate the fault. I also had an opportunity to work in few other places around the globe. Some of them are like India, Japan, Singapore, Qatar, and US. It was a great life, and I got to travel a lot. At the same time, I also had to learn a lot because, yeah, the systems, the way they are deployed are different at every country. And here's a fun fact. I don't know if it's a fun fact, but I find it funny. This is the satellite image of the outage that happened in 2003 in northeastern part of US. And the fact that I know almost everything about it, what caused it, how it is possible to get the blackouts, but it was pretty bad. And after that, I think US, strict down a lot of grid related issues and policies around it. With that, I wanted to say like why I wanted to give it up. It's not that I wanted to give it up. I started seeing a pattern where everything was getting digitalized, needed real-time interfaces. There were software issues time and again. Everything needed, like an alarm or notification at the control center. So everything was wired up to the digital extent. So the decisions are made more real time and the decisions are automated. And I realized like I'm feeling short of that knowledge where I can understand more how the softwares have been written so I can help troubleshoot when I'm integrating the stuff. And not from as a developer, mainstream developer at a time, but more I can advance into the same role as an engineer. And with that in mind, I'd also pursued my master's in computer science and had a very brief internship at Motorola where I had uh, s- some experience doing Android development because way back in 2008, Motorola was transitioning into Android devices, and everybody was like learning by themselves the code samples, looking at the Android developer sites, and that gave me, some like a different exposure to a different world which I had never encompassed before. So I would say internships are a great segue if you want to like transition into a career, find a place who can take you as an intern and explore the possibilities there. And I just did something because I think I have a very fresh memory that I started blogging everything, every learnings within that short span. And at the time I got referenced in Stack Overflow and I had no clue. I was very naive around how this development world goes. Um, and I ended up taking a job back in electrical industry at Siemens, hoping that now I have some exposure to programming, I can do a better job. And somebody had told me in the very beginning of my career that every 3 years you need to acquire a new skill. Um, and I would say when you are in computer science or development industry, it's not just 3 years. Every year you need to have a new skills added. And another life event happened is we moved to Bay Area, California, and I think I got the Silicon fever. Everybody I met either worked in the FANG companies or they were in the startups or they were starting their own startup. And I had no idea like what is happening. And for me as an electrical engineer, my role started to diminish here. Um, I couldn't find the right industry. I couldn't get into where I really wanted. So I had started building up the sensibility that I'm not reaching where I should be at this given point. And that's where I just decided naively, like, okay, I'll try my hand in the software industry. And I got into this, junction in my life, whether how do I get it? Where do I start? Where to start with? And I'm sure many of you who are transitioning or bifurcating into this development career, you must have felt the same. Um, and that's what I think that is very profound, because you all have that story. And let me share my transitioning story. um, I sat down with my husband and I'm like, I want to do it. I just want to try and see what it goes. And at that time in 2012, 2013, we kind of come up with a roadmap as like, let's identify the stack that I will continue to pursue on, get expertise. You have to get an expertise on that. The second is acquiring the skills. How do I learn the skills that I need? The third is finding a mentor. I We all have felt how much important the role of a mentor is. Um, get into the network, find a network, and finally, when you think you're ready, start applying for interviews. Or when you're not even ready, start interviewing. So these are five um, fundamental, ideas that you should definitely have in mind when you want to transition. And be like, they doesn't have to be linear. You can start with identifying stack and acquiring skills at the same time, while you are also having a mentor and networking doing at the same time. So you can do parallel things. It's just about having this, fundamental pillars for you to identify, like, okay, we need to have some ideas around it. So starting with one, like identifying the stack, again, I can reference the Stack Overflow post. And I think the number one preferred language is JavaScript, Python. For me, I had, because of my Motorola experience, I narrowed down, I'll do Java, and now it is Kotlin. And this is the radial graph on, there are multiple other components that you might need and you will need. As an Android developer, I knew I had to know about the IDEs, some of the server-side applications like Fireside and SQL database, to understand how the database in general works. So if you're an iOS developer, for example, you will also need some other, like Swift, Objective-C, which is now pretty much replicated, Xcode, to like work on. The second segue is acquiring skills. How do you do it? Well, again, referencing from the Stack Overflow and from my personal experience, yes, online resources. As an Android developer, the Android developer site, the code samples are great. So resources to start with. Um, Books. I have really enjoyed a Big Nerd Ranch book for Android development, and they walk through the entire app. And I have done that book from page one till the end of the page. So I have not let a single concept get out of the mind, and I've iterated over the books few times before I felt I'm ready. I did join the bootcamp, and I would say it was, for me, my experience with the bootcamp was not that great. I thought I did a good research. I watched their YouTube videos from the bootcamp, and I thought it will be a great place for me to learn. But when I actually signed up and went there, it turned out to be a different instructor. His pace was much faster than I hardly understood him. And that is also partially because the audience, the rest of the group was little more advanced than I was. So please do your research before you sign up for a bootcamp. You will be throwing away a lot of money out there. So ask them the questions, get the place, get a thing that really helps you. Mm, And I would also suggest try out a stack. Like, now there are so many YouTube videos. Take a language that you want, try it out yourself and see how much you are comfortable with, which language you are comfortable with, and then, proceed in that direction. Some of the online resources I find useful and have great content is Udacity. I had a chance to meet Laila Fujiwara, who was one of the instructors, and I think is still the instructor at Udacity. And she told me that every single line in Udacity is scripted, which I found very profound because now I actually paid a lot of attention on every single word they said. And I find that they are summing up the core or the gist of the lingo that you should be using um, in those videos. And even those one like a particular course, a video would only be a few minutes long, but I would spend like an hour understanding every single semantics that comes out from it and how does it apply to the Android concept. And yes, like that is how I did it. I don't know if there was any shortcut, but yeah. Coursera, Udemy also gives you certifications. Um, and YouTube, you can subscribe to the great content channels created by well-known in the industry and learn along with them. Mm. Then comes the code labs that basically walk down a particular concept in detail using the sample app for reference. Um, and then there are so many Stack channels to like Kotlin Lang, Stack Overflow, Medium. And while you're preparing all this, you will find yourself going through a roller coaster. Sometimes you're at the top of the world, and sometimes you'll hit the rock bottom, and you won't realize like how to, you will have self-doubt and struggles of those kind. And that's where I think the mentor comes in. He can definitely advise you where you are stuck. He can help you guide, accelerate further. Because he has been there in the industry, he has been doing stuff, he knows like what components are important, what and how to learn those components, and start networking, connecting. There are so many events. These are in particular for the Android, but you can find more chapters, local chapters, networking events outside, and start going there. Make a group of like-minded developers that you know of and start working with them together. I think a group is very important. So network and connect can definitely help you find a mentor and also find a group of like-minded and at a like, at the same position where you are or where you are starting from. You'll find many, many other developers at the same point and start studying together. And finally, when you are ready, start applying for the interviews, start applying for the companies that you want to do. One of the technique that I have always worked around that has worked me, it is like interviewing is like putting up a frame and filling up a lot of pieces together. You may not be able to complete the entire frame or fill in all the puzzles, but try to be like good at most of the concepts that you think are important, looking at some of the keywords from from the job descriptions, and then start working towards them. Try to identify which are the top important things for that particular section, prepare them very well, and when you think you're 40-50% ready, start interviewing. And once you start interviewing, keep the bunch of questionnaires. I always cross analyze after you have done an interview whether what went well, what did not go well, to where you were short of answers and where you had no idea. And make sure when the next time you are interviewing, if the same question is being asked, you know the answers. Um, I usually give 1.5 month to prepare, rebrush, understand some of the concepts. I start interviewing with some of the companies that I'm okay if I don't get them into. And finally, when I'm ready, I'm ready. And I will tell you that you will end up with multiple offers. None of us was born a programmer. So please don't be too harsh on yourself, but with hard work, dedication, you will get there. And along that way, I felt like after even joining a company, you will still have your fears and challenges. And some of them, I would say, is a confidence gap. Confidence is extremely important. It is sometimes more important than actual competence or ability to do something. Also, this is the article that was published by The Atlantic, and their other point was women exhibit less confidence than men do. everything from putting them up for promotion to even apply for the job in the first place. And if you get over the confidence issue, you actually produce the same result compared to the folks who has competence. And I'm sure everybody has felt short of confidence at times. Another issue is a stereotype threat that you are a part of minority group and there might be some negative stereotypes associated with that minority group. And simply because you are thinking about it, it actually affects your ability to do something. There was a study done, and the students who were doing SAT, oh, sorry, I moved to another, it's okay. I will, so with the negative stereotype, I just wanted to share is I was already advancing into my career into a different segue. I felt my age as a negative stereotype at times. I also felt like I'm not able to blend in nicely. I'm not able to blend in a nice fashion that I would like to with the young developers. I did not feel that I had enough knowledge, and that is also part of my confidence issue. Another issue that I faced is an imposter syndrome, which describes somebody who feels like a fraud even though they are successful at what they do. And I think like at many times I felt like my success is undeserved, and I feel like I will get exposed. And I what I have achieved is just a matter of luck, because I've been at the right place at the right time. And like I don't know why, but I have I have struggled with imposter syndrome until a long, long time. And Udacity also like come up with a video where they interviewed many engineers, managers um, at Google, and they all have felt imposter syndrome at the time. And that was very um, balming to me, to know that everybody feels that. Another challenge I would say is advancing into your career. Yes, after you have been few years out, um, you want to advance. And I think one of the benchmark you can say like how are you reviewing the PRs? How is your language or the semantics? How depth are you when you're talking about that particular subject? And if you find that you don't have the answers, fix it. And finally, taking the leap, you are in charge. Don't let anybody or any of the challenges become a hurdle for you. I would recommend a book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, and it's by Carol Dweck. She's a Stanford psychologist, and basically, she has done a bunch of experiments related to learning and confidence and the ability to come back from failure. And the very TLDR of the thesis is there are two types of mindset: fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And starting with a fixed mindset is the idea that talent and ability is innate. And it is something in your DNA that you are born with it. And it doesn't change. If you are here, if you know, if here you are, if you have heard this phrase, I'm not a math person, or I'm really bad at languages, these are the kind of, out of the world examples of fixed mindset. And how it manifests, on the other hand, is a group of folks who are able to nurture and foster what is known as a growth mindset, which is this understanding that brain is malleable, that people change over time, and that you can learn new things. And study after study, it was shown that even if you were somebody, you knew you were good at math, but if you had a fixed mindset and you hit a problem, and there was somebody who wasn't good at math but had a growth mindset, would end up doing better. To sum it up, we have our problem, stereotype threat, imposter syndrome, and we have some ideas about how we might have a solution, which is to encourage confidence and encourage folks to actually think about having a good growth mindset. Another thing is like when you want to advance your career, I want to definitely encourage reading this book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Um, He mentions that psychologists have spent decades attempting to find out whether innate talent exists. However, the more they research this question, the more they realize that preparation plays a big role in the formation of the talent. Uh, he kind of talks about the 10,000 hour rule, and he says that people over 8 years who have succeeded as either a great violinist or a great football player or whatever, they have really, really put that much amount of effort. Um, the only TLDR is, yes, like as I am preparing myself for advancing the career, one thing I've noticed is preparation takes a big role, and putting in actually the number of hours, and they can be spread across days. It doesn't have to be like 24 hours a day or 12 hours a day, but putting in the right amount of effort is definitely important. Um, Finally, I would also suggest like break down the complex task. Spend like 1 hour a day, if not too much, if there is a complex task. Do group studies. I was talking to my manager before the talk, and she told me like she has been doing Swift UI, and I have another colleague doing very much into Jetpack Compose, and they exchange notes, and that accelerates learning. Another example is also like, she herself was mentioning to me that she was playing violin, she was making good progress, but then she joined a band, and it accelerated her learning way beyond she could think. So stay disciplined, stay focused, because as the theme goes, progress, not perfection, is important. I want to close down with this, that progress that matters, years of building up and practice. Perfection can slow you down and stop you from achieving great things. Don't forget to celebrate your wins and achievements. Thank you so much for helping me rewind my own journey and looking back along with you. And please feel to reach out to me for any questions.